It's funny how many learners tell me the same thing. In my head, my English is perfect, but when I actually speak, everything gets messy. That moment right there, when you feel the sentence fading or breaking apart, that scares people. And I get it. It feels like your brain is betraying you. But the truth is, nothing is wrong with your English. What's happening is actually really normal. Your thoughts are ready, but your mouth hasn't trained with them yet. It's like having a great idea, but not knowing how to draw it. The idea's strong, the skill just needs practice.
Exactly. People forget that speaking is physical. It's not just knowing the words, it's timing, breath, confidence, muscle memory, all of that. When you only study silently, you train the quiet part of English, not the spoken part. That's why the version of you inside your mind sounds smooth and confident, and the version of you in real conversations feels slower or unsure. It's not lack of knowledge, your speaking muscles simply haven't had enough experience. And the moment you understand that difference, you stop blaming yourself and start training the right part of your brain.
Think about it this way. You can read a recipe and understand it perfectly, but if you've never cooked the dish before, your first attempt won't look like the picture, not because you're bad at cooking, but because your hands are learning something new. Speaking works exactly like that. You're not failing, you're learning. And honestly, learners don't give themselves enough credit. Most of the time, they know more English than they think. They just haven't given their mouth permission to practice without pressure.
And pressure. That's such a big part of this problem. When you're alone, your English sounds amazing. You imagine full sentences, maybe even whole conversations. But when someone is actually in front of you, your brain starts worrying. What if I make a mistake? What if they don't understand? What if I sound weird? And that worry blocks the flow. The ironic thing is that the moment you stop aiming for perfect English, your real English becomes much better. You speak more naturally, you relax, your ideas come out easier.
I always tell learners this. Your goal isn't to sound perfect, it's to sound present. When your brain relaxes enough to stay in the moment, your English catches up to your thoughts. And one way to train that is by speaking out loud even when no one is listening. Walking to the bus, talk through your thoughts in English. Watching a video, repeat a line out loud. Cooking, describe what you're doing. It doesn't have to be complicated. The point is to create a habit where your body gets used to producing English, not just thinking it.
And honestly, the moment you start using your voice regularly, everything changes. You'll notice your sentences become quicker, your mouth moves faster, you don't pause as much, you stop translating, you start reacting instead of planning. It's like suddenly your English jumps from inside your head to the outside world, and it feels good, almost like a gear finally clicking into place.
Something else people don't realize is that fluency is built from small moments, not big ones. You don't wake up one day with perfect spoken English, but you do wake up one day after weeks of practicing and think, wow, I didn't struggle in that conversation. It sneaks up on you, slowly, quietly, naturally. That's why speaking out loud is so important. It gives your brain and your mouth moments to sync up without pressure.
And speaking of syncing up, the real magic happens when you stop waiting for the perfect sentence in your mind and just speak the simple version first, because the simple version creates confidence, and confidence creates flow, and flow creates fluency. You don't need fancy grammar to speak well. You just need words that come out comfortably.
And once your brain realizes that speaking isn't dangerous, it begins to trust itself. Your thoughts move more freely, your sentences come out smoother, you stop freezing, you stop panicking, you stop chasing perfection. You start communicating. And communication, not perfection, is the real measure of fluency. When you shift your mindset to that, the English in your head finally matches the English that comes out of your mouth.
And that's exactly what we're breaking down today. How to close the distance between who you are when you think in English and who you are when you actually speak. A lot of learners don't even know what creates that gap or how to shrink it. But once you understand the process, everything becomes easier. You'll start speaking with more comfort, more flow, and more confidence without forcing anything.
When we look at learners who make fast progress, there's always one common thing they do. They spend time talking, even when there's no audience. And that might sound funny at first, but imagine how much easier speaking becomes when your mouth already knows how to move through sentences. That's why some people can explain ideas clearly, even when they're still building their vocabulary. It's not magic. They've simply practiced the part most people ignore, using their voice. The more your body recognizes the rhythm of English, the more comfortable it gets producing it.
You're right, and something I've noticed is that people underestimate how automatic speaking can become with the right approach. At the beginning, every sentence feels like building a puzzle. You're choosing words, checking grammar, thinking about pronunciation, and it's exhausting. But with enough real speaking practice, that whole process starts happening in the background. You're no longer constructing sentences consciously. Your thoughts just appear in English naturally, and your mouth responds without hesitation. That's the moment learners describe as feeling fluent. And the path to that moment is surprisingly simple. It's just consistency.
Consistency is everything. Even 5 minutes of speaking practice a day does more than an hour once a week. Think about how your brain learns patterns. It strengthens whatever you repeat regularly. If you only speak English once in a while, your brain never gets the chance to build strong pathways for speaking. But when you integrate English into your normal daily life, talking while you walk, reacting to something you see, describing your day, practicing lines you heard, you teach your brain to treat English as something familiar, not something you have to prepare for.
And that familiarity is what reduces the fear. The fear isn't actually about English. The fear is about being caught off guard. Many learners worry they'll freeze or lose their words. But when your brain is used to producing English in small everyday moments, those bigger conversations don't feel like a test anymore. They feel like a continuation of what you already do. It's like warming up before a game. You're not afraid of playing if you've been practicing all morning.
One thing that really helps is creating small English moments throughout your day. For example, imagine you see a cat crossing the street. You can say out loud, "That cat looks like it's trying to find something." It doesn't need to be complicated. The moment you speak, you're building that bridge between thought and voice. And these little moments add up. Over a week, you might do it 50 times without realizing. That's 50 tiny practices your speaking brain needed.
And what's beautiful is that these small moments build natural English, the kind that flows when you're not overthinking. When learners only study with textbooks or lists, their English becomes stiff. It's correct, but it doesn't sound alive. But when you practice speaking about real things you see and feel, your English gains personality. You start using expressions that come from your experiences, not just from a lesson. That's when you begin sounding like yourself in English, not like a script.
And being yourself in English is one of the biggest steps towards real fluency. When you're not pretending to be perfect, you speak more freely. You laugh more. You react naturally. And those reactions are what make conversations flow. For example, imagine someone tells you a funny story. If you're relaxed, you might say, "No way, that really happened?" But if you're stressed and trying to sound perfect, you might freeze or overthink how to respond. The relaxed version always sounds more fluent, because fluency is about connection, not grammar.
Exactly. And learners need to hear this clearly. Fluency isn't built by memorizing advanced vocabulary. It's built by repeating simple sentences smoothly until your brain trusts you. You don't need to say magnificent atmosphere when the place felt really nice, works perfectly fine. Confidence grows from using the language you already know. And once your confidence rises, your sentences naturally get richer and more expressive without you pushing.
Another thing that helps close the gap between your thoughts and your voice is learning to give yourself a little space while speaking. Not long pauses, but natural breathing space. Native speakers do this all the time. They don't rush, they let their sentence breathe. Learners often panic and try to speak quickly so they don't sound slow, but that usually makes them freeze even more. When you allow yourself to breathe, your mind stays calm, and calm minds produce smoother English.
And that calmness also helps with pronunciation. When you rush, your mouth can't shape the sounds correctly. When you slow down just a little, everything becomes clearer. And you don't need to force an accent. Clarity is more important than sounding like anyone else. Your natural voice will always work better than something you try too hard to imitate. The goal isn't to sound like a native speaker. It's to sound comfortable speaking English.
And that comfort shows. People can hear it. When someone is comfortable, their English has a softer rhythm. Their words feel connected, their ideas flow. And even if there are mistakes, the conversation still feels natural. That's something learners think they need many years to achieve, but honestly, it comes much faster than people expect if they practice consistently and without pressure.
Speaking of pressure, there's something important learners should know. Your brain works better when it feels safe. If you push yourself too hard or judge yourself too much, your brain blocks the flow. But when you tell yourself, it's okay if it's not perfect, your brain relaxes and releases the English you already know. Many learners already have the fluency they want, they just haven't unlocked it yet because they're too focused on avoiding mistakes.
Exactly. Mistakes don't stop fluency. Fear does. The more comfortable you become with small imperfections, the faster your speaking improves. Instead of thinking, I made a mistake, think, I tried, and that's progress. That mindset changes everything. And with that mindset, speaking stops feeling like something you must prepare for and becomes something that naturally blends into your day.
And that's really the heart of it. The English in your head is already strong. The goal now is to let it come out without adding pressure or fear. When you train your mouth to join the process, the gap between thinking and speaking gets smaller and smaller until one day you don't even notice it anymore. You just speak.
It's interesting how the moment someone stops treating English like a school subject, their speaking ability finally starts to open up. When you think of English as something you have to perform, your brain becomes stiff. But when you think of it as something you simply use, everything becomes lighter. You stop worrying about sounding perfect and start focusing on expressing yourself. And expression is what brings your English out of your head and into the real world.
That shift makes such a difference. When you treat English like part of your everyday life, you naturally create moments that train your speaking without you realizing it. For example, imagine you're watching something interesting and you react out loud. Even if it's just a simple sentence like, "That's surprising," or "I didn't expect that." Those small reactions are effortless, but they're powerful. You're teaching your mind not to hold the language inside. You're teaching it to release your thoughts as they happen.
Exactly. And that's what fluent speakers do. They don't prepare their sentences. They let their thoughts move through their voice in real time. That's the difference learners feel inside their heads. Everything sounds natural internally because there's no pressure, no audience, no judgment. But when they speak to others, their brain starts preparing, editing, analyzing, and all that overthinking slows everything down. When you learn to react in English the same way you react in your native language, speaking becomes easier because you're not stopping to polish every sentence.
And something that helps with that is practicing unfinished sentence. A lot of learners don't realize how often native speakers pause mid-sentence, change direction, or adjust their thoughts. It's normal to say something like, wait, let me explain it differently. That's completely natural. When learners understand that they're allowed to do the same, the pressure disappears. You don't need to deliver perfect sentences. You just need to let your ideas come out and shape themselves as you speak.
You can even practice this at home. Pick a topic, your day, your plans, something funny you saw, what you cooked, what you want to watch later. These everyday topics build the strongest speaking habits because they're authentic. They're not memorized. They're not rehearsed. They come straight from your mind. And that's exactly the bridge we need to strengthen.
This is why speaking gets easier once you let go of the idea that English has to impress anyone. When you speak the way you naturally think, your English becomes more honest, more comfortable, and more consistent.
And that's when your voice finally starts to sound like the English version of you, not a version you're trying to force or perfect.
And that real version is the one that will grow the fastest. When you're yourself in English, your thoughts flow without resistance, and your speaking becomes smoother without effort. The trick is to build that connection little by little
something I've
until
noticed
one
when
day
people
you realize
finally reach
your
that
English
point
in your
where their
head
spoken
and your
English
English
feels
out loud
natural
sound
is
almost
that
the
they
same.
stop obsessing over how they sound and start paying attention to the conversation itself. It's like the moment English becomes a tool rather than an obstacle, a whole new world opens up. They stop listening to their own voice and start listening to the other person. And that's when speaking becomes automatic, without forcing anything.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, a lot of people expect fluency to feel like this big moment. Like one day they'll just unlock perfect English. But it doesn't happen that way. It happens through all the small habits that you barely notice. The quiet moments when you describe something to yourself. The times you react in English without planning. The moments you practice everyday topics without even thinking of them as practice. Those are the real fluency builders. Not the dramatic ones, the invisible ones.
Exactly. And I think learners underestimate how powerful those daily micro-habits are. Saying one sentence out loud while walking, reacting to something you see online, summarizing what you just watched, repeating a phrase that sounded nice, all of that counts. Actually, it counts more than repeating long scripted dialogues or memorizing complicated vocabulary you'll never use. Real fluency grows from real moments, not rehearsed ones.
And it's funny how once that becomes normal, you start noticing something else. You stop caring about mistakes the way you used to. Not because you make fewer mistakes at first, but because you're too focused on the conversation to pay attention to them. You're thinking about the meaning, not the performance. That mental shift is huge. Mistakes become part of the rhythm instead of something that ruins your confidence.
That's true. You know how native speakers talk? They restart sentences, they say things like, wait, let me think. They correct themselves mid-sentence. It's completely normal. So when learners allow themselves to speak more like that, they remove so much pressure. English becomes flexible instead of stiff. And when language is flexible, it becomes easier to use. Fluency isn't about perfect English, it's about comfortable English.
Comfort is the key. Because when someone feels comfortable, their voice changes. Their tone becomes more natural, they stop hesitating as much, and even their pronunciation improves without focusing on it. Confidence has a direct effect on the clarity of your speech. It's like your voice stops trying to pretend and just starts existing the way it wants to.
And that comfort comes from familiarity. If you want English to feel normal, you need to create an environment where the language is present every day. Not in a stressful way, not a study 3 hours a day way, just in a natural way, hearing it, reacting to it, using it for small things, making it part of your inner world. Little by little, your brain starts seeing English as part of who you are.
And when English becomes part of who you are, your voice in English becomes more real. You stop speaking like someone who's trying to pass a test, and you start speaking like yourself, just in another language. And that's the real goal. Not perfect pronunciation, not perfect grammar, not complicated words. It's about being yourself comfortably and clearly.
Another thing I always tell learners is this. Your fluency is not measured by how many words you know, but how smoothly you can use the words you do know. Some of the most fluent speakers use simple vocabulary all the time. Simplicity is powerful because it keeps the conversation flowing. You can always learn new vocabulary along the way, but if you can express your ideas with the words you already have, that's fluency.
And fluency grows when you stay relaxed while speaking. A lot of learners tense up without realizing it. Their shoulders rise, their breath gets shorter, their voice gets tight. When you relax your body, your voice flows better. People don't realize how connected the body is to language. A relaxed body helps create a relaxed voice, and a relaxed voice leads to smoother speaking.
And what helps with that is remembering that every conversation is just two humans sharing ideas. That's it. Not a test, not a performance, not a competition of who sounds smarter. When you speak with that mindset, everything becomes easier. And conversations become more enjoyable too, because you're actually connecting rather than worrying about being judged.
And that connection is the heart of communication. It's the reason we learn languages in the first place, to share our thoughts, our experiences,
our feelings. When English becomes the tool that helps you do that, instead of something that blocks you, everything shifts. And the only way to reach that point is through real, everyday use. No pressure, no perfection, just natural expression.
And what's beautiful is that your progress shows up in the most unexpected ways. One day you'll say a sentence and realize you didn't translate it, or you'll join a conversation and feel less nervous, or you'll watch something and understand it without concentrating. Those moments prove that fluency is already happening inside you. It just needs time and gentle practice to become visible in your voice.
So, if there's one thing to take from today, it's this. Your English doesn't need to sound perfect to be powerful. It just needs to sound like you. And the more you allow yourself to speak naturally, the faster your speaking ability will rise to match the version of English you hear in your mind. Your internal English is already strong. We just want your spoken English to catch up to it.
And it will, with consistency, with comfort, and with the habit of expressing your thoughts out loud without pressure. Your voice will find its rhythm, your ideas will flow, and English will feel less like something you're trying to manage and more like something you live with. That's when the real fluency arrives, quietly, naturally, and confidently.